isn't it? But you know, after all, it is December. But you know, I've been feeling rather poorly as of late. Dr. Ireland from over in Louisville said it was a slight stroke. But I guess it's to be expected. I'm 82. But you know, I did so want to take flowers to the family today, and also especially to Daniel. So I made it to the cemetery, and I took Daniel's favorites, and mine too, roses. Now, you might think that it's a bit strange to be going to the cemetery to talk to someone, but I go there frequently. Daniel and I are seniors. We've never parted. And I'd like to tell you about Daniel because there's nothing to myself if it isn't Daniel. And as is told to you, we met at a Christmas party. It'll be 64 years tomorrow night that we met at this Christmas party. Well, let me tell you, my eyes caught Daniel's and Daniel's caught mine. Now, it didn't take us long to strike up a courtship, and yes, I found out that Daniel actually was a ticket agent right here in New Albany, where Father was a conductor and a station master. Well, of course, I could take many opportunities to visit Father at the station, couldn't I? And that I did, and of course, our romance blossomed rather quickly, but it was meant to be. But the fact that just a few months later, on April the 12th, those Confederates, they attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Well, now that was throwing this nation into a war. Daniel and I knew he would do the right thing. He would stand up for this country. He would be there. So we really spent as much time together as we could. And then by May, Daniel had been appointed captain of the Anderson Rifles. Along with Benjamin Scribner being further up in command, they were best of friends. And so then we decided by August that engagement would be in order. We were engaged in August. Now, that was a smart thing for us to do because, you see, the President Lincoln had called for troops to be formed, and our governor was calling, Governor Morton, that is, was calling for all the boys to enlist, come and defend this country. So they were doing so, and by September, remind you, no, we'd only got engaged in August, but by September, the 38th Indiana Infantry was called upon to cross the river here and protect the railroad and Louisville. Word had been received that the rebels were going to come up, take over the railroad, and thus come right into Louisville, and of course they'd be taking over the ports in here in Louisville. So that couldn't happen, so they were called upon to take and march. We saw them off right down here at the river. Now we had to stay brave, even though we hated to see them go, because we did not know when we would see them again. Now they were told 90 days, the skirmish will be over, we'll put them down. It didn't happen that way, as we all will know. But we, the wives, the girlfriends, the sisters, we were brave and we saw them off. Now, they go on, they go down there. Oh yes, they finally work around through E-Town, Lebanon Junction. They come back up to Fort Duffield, set up encampment. And it was there that Daniel wrote me the first of 200, excuse me, my mind, you know, at 82, but 378 letters. I saved every one of them. Now mine, Daniel put to the flames because he said no rebel ever read his wife's letters. So, but I have all of his, every one of them. I keep the very special ones in here in my little case. Well, as time went on, the soldiers, they fought many skirmishes, the 38th did themselves proud. But there was more recruits being needed because there was lots of casualties and all too. So an interesting fact is that the boys here in Indiana wanted so badly to fight for the Union that they were going to the tune of 800,000 under the age of 18. Now you say, how did they get past the recruitment officer? Well, I'll tell you how they did. Many of them wrote 18 on a piece of paper, put it in their shoe. Then when they were standing before the recruitment officer, and he would ask, are you over the age of 18? And they would honestly say, sir, as I stand here, I am over 18. Sadly, so many of those never got to see their 19th or 20th or 21st birthday. But they did want to go. They did want to defend the Union. Now, as time went on, I would say that the 38th got their baptism into battle and first saw the elephant. The horrible horrors of war was at the Battle of Perryville, and that was in October of 1862. At that time, Daniel was commander, and before it was over, he had led the troops to really, if you must say a successful battle. We only lost 25 men and 27 injured out of our over 500 that we sent into that battle. And that was the last time that the Confederates ever tried to take Kentucky. So, from then on, Daniel was made a major of the 38th. And we go on, other battles, skirmishes, nothing too serious, but serious enough, of course, when it's war. Then by December of 1862, it's the Battle of Stone River. 2 very, very horrible days. And it was at that battle that Daniel's favorite horse that he had brought here from right here in New Albany, Steve, was shot out from under him and killed. Daniel didn't get really seriously injured in the fall. Then that goes on in December. Then we come around to the spring of 1863. Things had settled down just a bit to where Daniel was going to be allowed a furlough. He wrote me and he said, Mollie, our engagement has been properly long enough. Let's get married. I'm getting a furlough in April. And he did. He came home here to New Albany. We had a wonderful wedding. In fact, I have my wedding dress here. We had a wonderful wedding right down here at Mom and Daddy's house, right on Main Street between 5th and 6th. I chose to wear white. But did you know many of the girls during the Civil War chose yellow for their wedding dresses? Because they felt yellow was a color of happiness. And they wanted to be as bright and happy as they could for their groom. But I wanted to be traditional. Now, this worked out fine for Daniel and I because, you see, he had been assigned to go to Indianapolis and report to the authorities as to the war, what his assessment was, and various insights that he had. So he did, and we left, went up there for 2 or 3 days while he did his business duties, then came back to New Albany, visited the family, and then we handedly went on our way to Nashville. And it was there that Daniel and I had these pictures made in Nashville, Tennessee, in April of, well, it's actually about May of 1863. Now those over there are our official wedding portraits. They were made right over here in Louisville. But I like these. This shows my Daniel. So we went on. We went to Murfreesboro where the 38th was encamped. I was allowed to stay there for 6 weeks. Now this wasn't unusual at all, because often the officers' wives and sometimes even the privates' wives were allowed to visit in camp when there was not fierce battles or no thought of being a fierce battle. The soldiers were so respectful. Enjoyed our time there and our honeymoon. I came back home. When I came back home, I followed our governor's request. I started forming the Ladies' Aid Society. And let me tell you, we got busy. I saw firsthand what the boys needed in camp, such as one request we had was for hospital flags. In fact, some of the doctors right down here in Paducah came up here to New Albany, asked the ladies, could they please make hospital flags? They needed them to fly over the barns, the schoolhouses, the individual homes, the tents out in the field, the canopies. and if they were fortunate enough, a church, because you see, church pews allowed for a place to lay the wounded down. The pews served as beds. We got busy and they asked for them in 3 sizes. Even the ambulances that was in the Civil War, some were 2-wheel, some were 4-wheel. They also needed a flag to let the enemy hopefully know we're caring for the wounded. Don't fire upon us. Because you see, as doctors take their oath, they also had to take and care for the wounded of the other side. Now, I could go on and tell you so many stories. I could tell you about the 8 different times that Daniel's jacket or his cloak was shot through with a bullet, all the way through it. He'd bring it home for me to mend, or he would get someone on the field to mend. This went on 8 different times. I could tell you about the 6 times that his horses were shot, the 3 times that they didn't get back up. It was at Stone River, Chickamauga, and then at the siege of Atlanta. Daniel always wrote me in those letters. He said, "Don't you worry, Mollie. The God of Providence will bring me home. I will come home to you." And you know, he did get to come home in February of 1864. February the 20th, his boy was born. So he did get to be with his son for a short while. He got a short leave at that time. First one he'd had since our wedding. Now, I started preparing for the day that Daniel would be coming home. You know, the ladies of Indiana made over 250,000 quilts and comfortables, not comforters, comfortables, to send to the war zone, because they were so needed and they were so lost in battle, and sometimes they were so caked with blood and dirt from surgeries that they had to be burned. Other times, if they were used to wrap a diseased soldier in, of course, when they passed, they had to be burned. So we had to keep making them and making them and making them.